You're listening to episode number 31 of the Play Your Position podcast.
Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count. Here's your host, Mary Lou Kaser. Let's get started.
Kickoff, move the chains, and touchdowns. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where each week another insightful conversation makes it into the end zone. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaser, and this is the podcast that features conversations with and about people who show up and play full out each and every day. They are the people you admire: entrepreneurs, writers, artists, musicians, parents, teachers, athletes, adventurers, and their stories give us a glimpse into what it means to be human. My goal for each episode is to inspire you with stories that make you think, introduce you to cool new people, open you up to new ideas, and inspire you to keep playing full out in your life's work in order to make a difference. As always, details about each episode can be found over on the show notes page at my website, maryloukaser.com/podcast, where you will find a clickable list of each episode. In this episode of the Play Your Position podcast, I will be discussing a topic that isn't always popular, but I believe is super important to look at. And the topic I'm referring to is losing. For those of you who are sports fans, we are coming to the end of the NFL season for 2014/2015. The Super Bowl is looming large, and one team is going to win that game, and the other team is not. Now, for those of you who've been listening to my podcast for some time, you are well aware of how much of an Oregon Ducks fan I happen to be, as well as a fan of the game of American football. After all, this show is structured using elements of the game of American football with kickoff, move the chains, and touchdown. And at the beginning of this month, January 2015, I had two incredible opportunities to see my favorite college football team, the Oregon Ducks, play in two big games. The first one occurred on January 1st, New Year's Day, in Pasadena, California, in the Rose Bowl Stadium. I had been to see the Ducks play in Rose Bowl games in previous years, but this year's game had particular meaning to me for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because my parents were able to join me at the game, which was really a lifetime experience for them. And the second reason that this particular Rose Bowl was so incredibly powerful in my grand scheme of things, if you will, is that it signified whether or not the Ducks would qualify to go on and play for the grand title of them all in the national championship. Because again, for those of you who follow college football, the way that teams are determined for the playoffs and the championship changed in 2014. No longer does a computer with an algorithm have say in how a team is chosen. It is now strictly a human-generated decision, and there are lots of people who are very, very happy about that. And of course, there are people who are whining and complaining, as there always are. So, where I'm going with this, the Ducks did win the Rose Bowl quite handedly. It's an exciting game, beautiful day, lots of energy, and here we are thinking, we made it, we're going to take it all this year. The Ducks really had a magical season, as any team that just has won and earned its way to that final match. And again, I don't care if you're a football fan, a baseball fan, a soccer fan, a hockey fan, or even a fan of any kind of competition where there is a grand finale, like the Olympics. So here we are in Arlington, Texas, middle of January, and we think that the Ducks have an amazing chance of winning the national championship. Well, to make a long story short, they didn't win. They were the losers, and all of us fans who have been following them for not just this season, but many seasons, some people for their entire lives since they were little kids or if they went to college at the University of Oregon, losing that game was very, very painful, as is losing in general. Friends of mine joked with me and asked, was I wearing black? How long was I going to be in mourning? And I said, well, probably about a week, which was about true. It took me about a week to really digest what had happened, because the thing about it is what's really hard about when your team or your person loses is you've put so much expectation into that one event, and your hopes are so high, and there really is a piece of you invested into that team or into that person. And when the outcome isn't what you imagined it would be, it feels personal. And that's one of the parts about losing that really, really stings, is when we lose ourselves, whether we are the competitors or maybe we're in sales and we lost out on an opportunity to serve a client because our competition was just that much better. Whatever the facet may be of losing hurts. It hurts. The higher the expectations, the greater the hurt and pain is when those expectations aren't met. The good side of losing, that's kind of what I really wanted to get into today, because all things being equal in terms of preparation, practice, and getting to the meeting on time, so to speak, what hurts the most when your side isn't picked, your contract isn't chosen, your team loses the big game, like my Ducks did, like the Seahawks might, or the New England Patriots might on Sunday. One of them is going to lose, right? It's really what's behind the loss that hurts. It's about the how the loss came about, really not the why. Because when you ask the question, why did we lose? That really isn't the right question to be asking. But how did we lose is the right question. Why is emotional, how is practical, and that's the difference. When things don't go well, you want to let the tears fall. You want to rant and rave and shake your fist at the sky. You want to let those emotions flow for a little while. Because in matters of getting better, the practical is always going to trump the emotional. So if a team or a person, if you let yourself just swim in that emotion forever and ever, amen, you're never going to move forward. You're always going to be carrying that metaphorical chip on your shoulder. And that's going to impede progress because you can't run as quickly with a chip on your shoulder as you can without. So here's what you do in the aftermath of losing. You want to examine what happened from a mechanical standpoint. So the next time that you get a chance to play, you work from gain rather than from loss. Because no matter what anyone says or believes ahead of time, if one side executes their plan more effectively, more efficiently, more expertly, it is going to win and yours is not. Wise losers will take that loss and use it as a way to get better. My favorite college football player of all time is, bar none, Marcus Mariota. Now, I am not one of these late to the party Marcus Mariota fans. I've been watching him play since he took the field for the very first time at Oregon, when he wasn't a household word, when he wasn't blasted all over the internet, when he was just Marcus showing up to play football. And one of the things that I've admired about this young man, really from the get-go, is his whole attitude about getting better. Marcus really does take life from that perspective, that when he loses, when things don't go according to plan, instead of wallowing in that loss and feeling sorry for himself, he says, I need to get better. How am I going to get better? Honestly, whenever we lose, no matter what it is, I think the most imperative question to ask, again, once the tears have fallen, once the pain, that immediate raw burning pain has subsided, the question really to ask yourself when you're looking in the mirror is say, what can I do to get better? What is next for me? What can I do next? Not, why did it happen? Going back over every single play. As an aside note, that's one of the things that I think is a disservice in the sports world. These programs that are all about replaying shots from the games, and just over and over and over again, we have to see the fumble or the dropped ball or the missed tackle or something. It's like rubbing the nose in it, and it doesn't do any good. Now, it makes somebody money because they wouldn't do it if it didn't. But I just find that that's a bunch of noise that doesn't help anyone. Think about your own life. What if you had a 24/7 videotape of your life, and every mistake you made was then replayed 24/7 across the television or across the internet? It's damaging. It doesn't help. Focus on what's next. For those people who choose to live a public life and the video is part of it and capturing different faux pas and flubs and falls from grace is par for the course, then you've signed up for that. And it's going to take you even more than perhaps the average private person to work through those losing moments. But again, the skill set that it takes is the same, whether you're a private individual whose face never is shown anywhere online or on television, or you're as public as someone like Tom Brady, Marcus Mariota, and the list goes on and on. Wise losers, I said this earlier, wise losers will take the loss and use it as a way to get better. Sore losers will spend a lot of time and energy pointing fingers, keeping everyone stuck, and coming up against the same roadblocks again and again, guaranteeing that very little chance of a victory is going to come their way anytime soon. So how do you do this? What are some takeaways that I can offer to those of you listening today? You're thinking, that's great. I just lost a sale, or I just lost the home that I had my eyes set on, or I just lost somebody very close to me. These are all parts of life, and they're really, really hard. And I'm not trying to minimize the pain or the suffering or the grief that each one of us has to experience and work through as a means of moving forward. What I am saying is that it is possible to take a step backwards and survey the scene and remove yourself from the raw emotion after some time has passed, and really look at it again from that mechanical standpoint. Break things apart, pinpoint for yourself where within those parts that you've pulled out of the big picture can you do a better job with next time. Do you need to replace a part? Do you need to grease a part? Do you need to chuck the whole thing and replace the entire mechanism so that you can function moving forward? It works. It's hard, but it works. I've done it, and I know there are listeners today. You've done it too. You may not have realized it, but you've done it. And guess what? Losing is going to continue to happen to all of us. Just because you've gotten through one thing doesn't mean it's not going to come again. Wise winners and wise losers do the exact same thing in the aftermath of whatever event it may be. They look at themselves in the mirror, they experience the emotions, the highs and the lows, and then they ask themselves, what can I do to get better? So here's to you getting better so you can get out there, make it a great day, and play your position. Hey team, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. One of the ways that other people can discover this podcast is through ratings and reviews over on iTunes. So if you enjoy this podcast, I would be so appreciative if you took a couple of minutes to head on over to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and then leave me an honest rating and review. Doing that helps to get the word out and allows other people who are looking for inspirational content to find it. Again, head on over to iTunes, subscribe to this podcast, and then leave me a rating and review. Really, really appreciate it. And remember, always a great day to get out there and play your position.
Thanks for listening to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count at MaryLouKaiser.com.